Hey everybody, it's Joric. Welcome back. Hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. Great to have you. Thank you as always for watching videos. Please like them and share them if you feel it's appropriate to do so. Don't Please subscribe as well because I get a lot of viewers. I don't get a lot of subscribers. So if you subscribed, that would be great too. This video I wanted to make, I'll try to make it short and succinct. But I love the conversations I have with people that moved to Portugal years ago. And what I mean by years ago, the 90s. And there was a group that people that I was able to meet and start talking to when we lived there. And each year I was able to get a lunch together. And it was anywhere from 15 to 20 to 25 people that would come and talk about what Portugal was like. Because I love history, and I was always curious what made people move to Portugal long before Portugal even showed up on any magazine or international living pages, the place to be, long before social media. And some of these people moved before the internet was out there. And why did they move, and what was their motivation, and what was Portugal like then? So I will say, they all moved in the 90s. Most of the people, almost all exclusively lived in and around Lisbon. And when I say Lisbon, Lisbon out to Cascais, as far north as Torres Vedras, and then a couple lived in Sesimbra or Setúbal. So they moved anywhere from 1992 to 1998. And I also want to say that none of them are American. I know people don't like watching my videos because I'm American and they don't like anything American. Everyone that I had met with were British, French, Italian, and Belgian. And so since we've been gone, it took a while to get everyone to agree to get to a Zoom call, but was able to get 21 people on the Zoom call and talk through what they see over the years. And I wanted to make this video because I wanted to let you know what their concerns were in the 90s and the things that they laugh about that people, get frustrated about today. So things like immigration. For them, within 2 to 3 weeks, they had their appointment at CEF. And I don't even know if it was called CEF back then. I think they referred to it as something else. But then they got their resident cards within a month. Reunification happened within weeks, as well as cards within weeks. If they're looking for, they didn't have NHR. They said, some they would have loved to have that, but didn't exist back then. Golden Visa didn't exist back then. They moved mostly for two reasons. Either they were early retirees or pensioners, and they were able to move to Portugal. And often they decided on Portugal because it's where their parents came to holiday. It's where they holidayed as kids growing up, so that's where they came to. The other half of the people moved because of work, which they were able to, many of the businesses they were working for were opening or had an office in Lisbon or around Lisbon, so that's what prompted them to move. But, they said the immigration just was never an issue, and now thankfully they're well into permanent residency or citizenship, so it's not something that they have to deal with, or they moved long enough ago that they just, they just don't have to deal with the issues and the baloney that people have to deal with. And they also moved, when, they never dealt with, we get a sweetheart deal on taxes. They were paying whatever taxes they had to pay back then and are continuing to pay today. As you would expect, buying property or renting in the 90s, how much they could get, how much they had to pay for stuff back then, obviously is a fraction of what you pay for today. Now that's all relative because you move anywhere, even in your own country 30 years ago versus today, completely different story. But they were talking about, in 80 square meter to 100 square meter T2 in the Chiado area, which a couple of them still live in the same place, and, rent 50 a month. Well, they're changing between some of them were still talking escudos versus euros. But if you're looking at euros, less than 100 euros a month for a big place back then, what I consider to be a big place, and how much property, how much more just cheap and affordable the property was. What's interesting is in talking to all of them, the crime of what Portugal looked like in the 90s. And they said, today you hear about Portugal, virtually no crime or very little crime, and they just talked about how a couple of them from the UK, dodgy was a term that they used, and they actually looked at that as a reason that they did move, because it wasn't the safest place to move to. There might be some issues that happened, and they kind of liked that. They thought that that was oddly a good thing, as opposed to today. But they also talked about just drugs were rampant, and in walking in the streets of Chiado today, they said you wouldn't see that today, but 30 years ago it would not be uncommon to see people that would be shooting up on the streets or just laying out on the sidewalks that you'd have to walk around. Versus today, that's not really the case. In some areas maybe, but for the most part, because of the decriminalization, you don't really see much of that today. But I thought it would be interesting for people that are living in let's say moved in the last 5 to 10 years to Portugal, to get some perspective from them. The difficulty is I wanted to record the Zoom call so that way you could see and hear from them as opposed to from me. And nobody likes to go on camera, and most of them don't follow YouTube. They are not on social media. They just don't give a what about that. They think it's all sort of frivolous, which maybe it is. But the people that have moved a long time ago, just crime was a big deal and something you had to concern yourself with, whereas today you don't. Prices obviously were a fraction to buy or to rent property. But it's interesting how many people that the longer they live, and people I even met that moved in the 2000s don't follow YouTube. They're on with their lives. They may or may not have immigrant and expat friends. But I guess that's something that I want to finish this video by talking about, that the longer that you live in Portugal, maybe the less you pay attention to any of us, and you just go about your life, and you watch some videos to how to do something, but as far as you're living, you're moving on. YouTube is a part of it, or Facebook or Reddit or whatever, Instagram, and then you move on with your life, and you move past all of this and all of us. And that may be actually a good strategy. Get what you need from us, and then tell us to piss off for the rest of it, and move on. I think that sometimes I too get frustrated. There are periods of time where I don't watch anything, or I don't go on social media, just because I don't think it's good for my mental health to be too sucked into it. But I think it's encouraging to hear people that have been around for decades in the country that just don't care. They just don't pay any attention. They're not going to watch this video. They're going to live their life, and they just don't pay attention to the noise. And I think that that's a good strategy. What do you think? I would love to. I've been blabbering now and talking about what their experiences were. What's your experience, and what do you feel like the longer that you live in Portugal? Do you spend more or less time on social media? Just go about your life and you don't care. And that's probably a good way to maybe live life. Less time online and more time living. As always, thank you so much for watching. Love to comment below. Please tell me what you think, and enjoy your travels.